Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here today at Book Blather. If you're new here, I'm Dave, this is Olive, and we talk about books of all types that we've read or acquired recently to help spread the joy of reading. Today is a little bit of a special video. Today is it's part book review, part exciting announcement. So the book that we're going to talk about first is this, Dantes Inferno. This is just the paperback copy that I have. So we actually read this we're behind on video. So this is one of the ones that we just hadn't got around to viewing yet, but it's perfect because we can do this in combination with the related announcement. So Dante's Inferno, if you don't know, this is part one of a three-part story that makes up what's called the Divine Comedy. Inferno is the first part, and the second and third parts are Purgatorio and Paradiso. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't know. My Italian's not great. So it's an epic poem that was published by Dante back in the 14th century. So I don't think we even know exactly what year it was first published, but it was early 1300s. And I read this one because a few months ago when I read this, I was laid up this early in the year. I was laid up at the time. I was bedridden, so I just read this version because it was easy, because it was the paperback copy that I had, so it's easy to read in bed. This is the translation by Alan Mandelbaum. And so this is, I don't know, try to get it so you can see that there. But this has been translated many times. There's many different translations. So if you were going to read just a written version, just the text like this, you might want to do a little research into which translation might be best for you. There's some that are more modern than others. Some of the languages, it depends what kind of language you're looking for. There's some that are a little more faithful to the original. So what I would recommend actually, if you're going to read this, is to review. I didn't read this because it would have been hard to read in bed, but there are these illustrated versions, and this is a very old copy that you see I have here that with the pages ripped. This one was from 1948, but there are different versions of this, a bunch of different versions of this that came out over the years that are basically this edition of the book, but they different covers. Some have embossed covers, and this one, like I said, it's really old, and I found it at a book fair or something, and so that's what it looks like without the ripped dust jacket on it. And this it would be, like I said, we didn't read this version for convenience, but I'll show you what is in this. Has the illustrations by the famous author Gustave Doré, and as I'll flip through here so you can see a few of these. As you can see, some of these illustrations are just absolutely amazing. There's the illustration of the harpies in the forest, the minotaur on the cliff. Look at that one. That was pretty creepy, coming up out of the tomb in the ground. Here they are crossing the river Styx. So a lot of really cool illustrations that go along with the story. And so that's a really cool version to read with if you're going to read this poem. And so what this, if you don't know what this epic poem is about, and I'll stick with the Inferno because that's the one that I read. The Inferno is those three different parts: Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. That's this character's travels through hell, purgatory, and heaven. And so Inferno is about his travels through hell. And the way the story's set up is, it's the main character is himself. Dante is the main traveler in the story. And right in the beginning, Dante sort of wakes up in these mysterious dark woods, right before he begins the journey, and very early there he meets Virgil, which was kind of cool. Virgil ends up being his guide. Virgil, who of course is another great epic poem author. And so Virgil ends up being his guide, and the two of them travel into hell here, and they travel through what's the 9 different circles of hell. So there's these like concentric circles that represent basically escalating areas of hell, and each of these areas represent that they walk through has different. So it starts out with they each have each of these circles of hell has deals with people that have been sent there for different levels of sins. So the first few circles, they're what they call sins of incontinence, more personal thing, lust, gluttony, things like that. And then later, many of the later circles of hell are much worse. Evils that are perpetrated on others, and fraud and treachery and violence, all different kinds of violence. And so a lot of these circles, as you go down into hell, have their own. Within that circle, there will be multiple levels. There'll be 3 different tiers as they work their way down these concentric circles towards the center of hell. And it's quite a unique story. So, it's originally written in Italian. So, of course, you're always going to lose something when you're dealing with a translation. But it was. So I have a conflicted history now, very short history with this story, because the story was really pretty remarkable in terms of some of just the scary imagery, and that's why I think it would be good to actually to read a version that has the Dore illustrations in it, because I think that would just amp up the imagery for you when you're reading it. But each of these different areas of hell had like different creatures or different let's say creatures and different individuals that they meet, but different creatures, that different types of symbolism in each circle of hell. A lot of it is that sort of imagery and that sort of horror element to it, right, where he's just encountering all these different creatures and the suffering that the different people will go through. A lot of it is also somewhat of the part that I didn't like. A lot of it was sort of a political commentary a bit. He meets a lot of people down there, and there are some specific individuals that were. Dante was involved. He lived in Florence, and he was involved in Florentine politics a bit. And so, he had a lot of opinions on politics. And so some of this was particular individuals that, he thought should be in these different circles of hell. And so some of it was that. And so, I didn't know myself didn't know who a lot of these people were. And so some of that was a little, confusing and hard to follow at times. So when I ended up finishing this, I felt like I didn't really like it that much, actually. And that bothered me. I don't know why, just because this famous epic poem, one of the greatest epic poems of all time, I felt like I should like it more, and I didn't. So that sort of started me to get a little more invested in it, and I started reading a little more about it and rereading certain parts of it, and I got kind of oddly invested in the story after the fact. And I was trying to track down commentary. I didn't read any of this yet, but I was trying to track down some academic commentary on it in English, and I did end up buying this book, I guess on eBay, American Critical Essays on the Divine Comedy. So I will dig into this at some point, but I just haven't yet. But yeah, so I ended up having this weird little temporary obsession with the story, until I finally got to. Now I actually, I appreciate it some bit, and I would recommend reading it if you we're into those. So I don't know if everybody likes old epic poems, but if you're the type that maybe does, definitely try it. But this leads to the announcement that I was going to make, which is we have another story being published soon. There is an anthology that is coming out on July 1st. I hope I have that right, so don't kill me. I think it's coming out on July 1st, and it's called the Stygian Collection. And it is a collection of stories that is basically follows the theme Stygian. And some of these stories are more closely related to the Styx or the river Styx, and some of them are more just dark, dark stories, but that's definition of Stygian is dark and gloomy, and that's basically the theme of the anthology. So my story is more directly related to the Styx. They do in Dante's Inferno, they encounter the river Styx. So my story, which is called The Oarsman, is sort of a I won't give too much away, but it is sort of a surreal dystopian take on Dante's Inferno. That's where I ended up after getting so invested in this. At the end of it, I wanted to write a story about it. So this is sort of I don't want to call it a retelling, but kind of. It's set in this sort of future, sort of surreal world. It's really kind of meant to be like a Kafkaesque dystopian retelling of the story, and I will say that I put a lot into that story. So if you are familiar with Inferno, you will recognize a fair bit of symbolism in it. I think it's decent story. If I say so myself, I think it's a decent story, even if you're not familiar with Inferno, just as like a dystopian little horror tale. But if you do know this story well, you will get more out of it also. So that is coming up. Like I said, that's getting published in the Stygian Collection, which is being published by the Stygian Society that on July 1st, and I will leave a link to that below if you want to pre-order a copy of it. That would be great, and I would love to hear what people think of the story and all the other stories that are in there, because it's a good collection. So that's our exciting announcement, and so I guess we'll leave it at that. So so let us know if you have any, if you have any comments on Dante's Inferno, or you're planning on reading it, or you want to talk about it at all. Let me know in the comments. Be happy to talk about it as always, especially since we're like so invested in this one now with our own story coming out. So, but as always, thanks so much for watching. If you don't have anything substantive, I always have to say this. If you have anything substantive you want to say, but you want to leave Olive a puppy emoji, she always does like to see those. So, so thanks so much for watching. We'll see you very soon. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.